Many federal public servants return to the office today, some for the first time in almost 3 years. Now, under the new hybrid work plan, they are expected to work at least 2 or 3 days in the office by the end of March. For a look at how this will work and the issues at hand, I want to bring in Jock Climie. He's an Ottawa-based management side labor lawyer. Welcome to the program, sir. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
Let's just start. What are the concerns you're hearing from federal workers about going back into the office?
Well, I think the concerns are not just from federal workers, they're from workers generally. In our practice, we represent employers, and so they are getting a pretty steady diet of concerns and complaints from employees who are being asked to come back to work. And obviously, it's getting a lot of headlines in Ottawa because it's the federal workers who are now being asked to do so. But by and large, the issue is that people have gotten used to over the last 2-3 years. They've gotten used to working at home, which has meant all sorts of added benefits, saving on commute costs, daycare, just a whole host of benefits to working at home. The flexibility, frankly, being able to work in your pajamas all day. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons that employees are bringing forward as why this is better for them. And so there's been a pretty a sizable amount of pushback from employees, both in the federal government sphere and elsewhere.
So what the federal government is saying, what the minister responsible is saying, is that the employer dictates where the employee works from. True, or can there be ways around that?
It is true. Certainly, that is the advice that we here at Even Herndon are consistently giving our clients. Employers are responsible for fulfilling their mandates, and how best to fulfill those mandates is up to them. And pre-pandemic, I don't think anyone was questioning an employer's right to say, hey, we want you all in the office. We want you sitting around conference room tables and taking advantage of the collaboration and the synergies that come with in-person meetings. Being able to walk down the hallway to have a face-to-face conversation if something comes up has always been something that employers have found to be valuable and managers enjoy. So why shouldn't they be able to go back to that? Pandemic is obviously at a different stage than it was, and employers are simply reasserting the rights that they've always had, which is to dictate how and where and when work gets done.
Now, unions are saying that they're going to make this an issue at the bargaining table. Can they?
Yeah, I'm bargaining for several employers, including federal separate agencies, and they are bringing it to the table, but they can't force an employer to capitulate on an issue that is so fundamental as where and when and how work is done. So yes, it is being asked. It has been, frankly, it's come up at a number of bargaining tables that I've been a part of over the last 3 years, but employers are being in my experience anyway, doggedly determined to maintain what's called a management right, which is, sure, if an employee says, hey, next week, can I work from home? Employer can have a look at its schedule and its needs and say, yeah, that works for me. Or no, we're going to need you in the office next week. And that's a right that they've always enjoyed. And not many employers are willing to give that up at this stage.
Yeah, one of the things, I just want to clarify something I said in the lead. They're expected to be back in the office 2 to 3 days by the end of March. I want to ask you about this case. There was a Canadian accountant who was fired for being unproductive at her job. And the civil tribunal said, yes, she owes her former company almost $3,000 after software installed on her laptop revealed she misrepresented over 50 hours of work and called it time theft. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was an unusual case. Time theft is not unusual in the sense of employers often catch employees engaged in activities that they ought not to be engaged in during work hours. What is unusual about that case was the employer seeking to be reimbursed for that. Frankly, it rarely makes sense to do that. Employers will often spend more on legal fees trying to recoup that money than they will if they're ever successful. But that was a precedent that employers will be relying upon, and employees should be mindful of. That it might seem like a simple thing to simply work at another job while you're at work. When you're working from home, obviously these things are a lot easier to do. This is a cautionary tale now for those who are thinking about doing that, and gives employers now something else to think about when they catch an employee as to whether or not they'd actually want to pursue those costs.
Now we're hearing the back and forth on this. How do you think it will all play out in the end?
On the issue of can an employer require an employee to come into the office, we're confident that that is going to go in the employer's favor. And I'm not really seriously hearing unions argue against that. They are more trying to convince employers that this is a good idea for them. There's no question it is a recruitment and retention issue at the moment. Employers who are offering more flexibility, employers who post for jobs saying we will not require you to come into the office in this position, are going to attract more employees. And in a tight labor market, as we're currently experiencing, this is a draw. And I've got clients who have lost employees to employers who are offering that kind of flexibility. So to me, this is more a supply and demand issue. This is more of a what will the market bear issue. But from a legal standpoint, I just think that employees need to sort of get their heads around the fact that if their employer says, we want you in the office, and we want you in the office between these hours, if there isn't a collective agreement or a contract in place that stipulates otherwise, they're going to be required to do that.
Okay, well, we'll have to end it there. Thank you for this discussion. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Labor lawyer Jock Climie in Ottawa.